I mean, in terms of the format. So in the reading, you have to read some things and then answer some questions about them. Here in the listening, you'll be hearing some audios and then answering some questions about them. Okay, so it's similar in that sense. And even the types of questions are similar, you will see. So it's pretty much, I would say, the listening, or the reading, but in the format of an audio. Let's see. Okay, guys. So who remembers how many questions or how many passages or sets of questions we had in the reading section? Does anyone remember?
10 questions.
10 questions per passage.
Each passage.
How many passages?
3 or 4.
Exactly, 3 or 4. And it depended on whether you had your extra task or your extra passage in the reading or not, right? We said you will always have an extra task. Now this one could go in the listening or in the reading. So if it is in your reading, so that means that in the reading you have 4 passages. Here in the listening, you won't have the longer version, you will have the shorter one, and you will only have 5 tasks in the listening. But if you didn't have the extra one in the reading, then you will have it here in the listening. So if you only have 3 passages in the reading, that means that here you're gonna get 7 tasks. Okay, so you get 2 extra ones. Now, out of these 5 or 7 tasks, what you will be doing is listening to some conversations and some lectures, university lectures. Okay, conversations and lectures. If you have 5 tasks, you'll get 2 conversations and 3 lectures. And if you got 7 tasks, you'll get 3 conversations and 4 lectures. Okay, so it depends on the number of tasks you get, which all at the same time depends on the number of passages you had in the reading. So honestly, don't worry about this. The important thing is to know how to answer the questions in the conversations and the lectures. Not really how many of them you'll get. What is important though is the time that you have. The thing is, in the same way that in the reading, you only had 1 timer for everything, here in the listening, it's the same. You only get 1 timer for the entire listening section. So you are the ones in charge of managing and administering your own time. Nobody's gonna tell you to stop in a question or in a conversation or in anything. You are the ones that have to ask yourself to stop when you are taking too long to respond to certain questions. Okay, so it's important to know that. You will get 41 minutes if you have 5 tasks and 57 if you have 7. Now that means that approximately per conversation you should be spending 7 minutes at most per conversation, and per lecture you should be spending around 8 minutes. Okay, this is an approximate. This is kind of how this has to be. Okay, it's important that you spend less time in the conversations and you leave more time for the lectures, because I'm not going to lie to you, the lectures are harder than the conversations. So they will require more of your time. Okay, so 7 minutes per conversation and 8 minutes per lecture. To be honest, I don't think you guys are going to struggle with time. The good thing about the listening is that you either know their answer or you don't. You can never listen again, right? In the reading, you have the option of going back to the paragraph and seeing and looking for the answer, rereading once and twice and as many times as you wanted. Here in the listening, you only get to listen to the audios once. So no matter if you want to play it again, to play one specific part or do something, you'll never be able to do that. So you either know the answer or you don't. And if you don't, you have to take a guess and you have to move to the next question. Right? There's nowhere where you can get stuck here because you don't have the material to work with. Okay? Is that okay? Is that clear so far? Do you guys have any questions? Is everything clear? Yes, so clear.
Yes, clear.
Great.
It's clear.
Yeah. Today will end tomorrow. So today and tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll be working on conversations. And on Thursday and on Friday, we'll be covering lectures. Okay, so today let's focus only on conversations. The easiest part, I'd say, of the entire TOEFL test, at least for me, and I think for like some students out there, conversations are one of the easiest parts. So remember, you can have 2 or 3 of them. These conversations are, in average, 3 minutes long. So they could be a little bit more, they could be even 4 minutes long, or they could be a little bit less, even 2 minutes. So it's in average 3 minutes long. And per conversation, you will get 5 questions. So each conversation contains 5 questions. Good thing is the conversations are only between 2 people, so it's easier to know who's saying what. But let's see. Now, first thing you guys have to know, these conversations are gonna take place inside an American university. Right? So these are gonna take place inside an American university. And they are gonna be about university life. So what does that mean? It means that you should have a brief understanding of how universities work in the US, because they're different than how they are here. So you should understand a few things about how they work in the US, about the fact that maybe students can get to live there, about the program itself, the academic program, about like the sequence between the different programs that there are. So you have to know that because they're different than the ones we have here. And second, you have to have some vocabulary as well. So you gotta know some words related to university life in the US that maybe are not used here, right? So things like what a dormitory is, what accommodation means, meal plans, I don't know, advisors, the dean. So you have to have those words in your vocabulary so that you don't get lost when listening to these conversations, okay? So make sure that you watch some YouTube videos explaining the academic system in the US. And that's gonna get you the vocabulary you need and the understanding you need. That's all you need, really. Okay, everything clear so far? All right, so who's gonna be speaking here in the conversations? They're gonna be held between one student from this university and a university worker. So that is somebody who works for the university, right? So for example, the number one person that we may be thinking of is a professor, right? The teacher, the university teacher. So that is one very common option of a conversation, a student and a professor. Who else works in the university? Can you guys think of another person that works for the university?
Administrative person.
Okay. So some administrators maybe. Anyone who works in the administration section, yes. Who else?
Another student.
Does the student work for the university?
Another student.
You sure though? Because we're saying that these are university workers, right? So people who work in the university, not students.
Securities.
Okay, could be, right? Maybe security guards. Who else?
The bar person. The person of the bar of the cafe.
Oh, okay. From the cafeteria, probably. Okay. I don't know, the cafeteria person. Yeah, could be. Maybe they're discussing something about the meals, right? Maybe the student is vegetarian and there's no vegetarian option left. I'm sorry?
The people who clean.
Okay. So we could say the clean ladies. Okay. Maybe the student has lost something, right? Has lost an item and they want to see if they can find, right? Maybe the librarian, maybe an advisor, maybe, I don't know, somebody from a club, maybe somebody from the international office. So maybe this is an international student. Maybe a secretary from a certain office. Maybe the accommodation officer. So to discuss something related to accommodation. I don't know, like there's so many options. But the point is that
President could be.
okay, maybe the dean, right? Yes. Could be maybe, yes, maybe the dean. So why is it always gonna be like that? What happens is that what they are gonna be talking about is a problem that the student has. So the student has a problem and it could be related to anything inside the university, right? So maybe the student has a problem with an assignment. In that case, they'll go and talk to the professor about it. Maybe the student has a problem with security in his dorm, right? So maybe they're gonna talk to the security guards, to the ER, right? Maybe they have a problem with the meal plans, right? So they're gonna talk to the person who's in charge of the cafeteria. Maybe they have a problem finding a book in the library. So they will talk to the librarian about it. Maybe they have a problem with organizing their classes, or maybe with choosing the major. So they will go and talk to the advisor. Maybe the student wants to do an exchange program. So they'll go and see somebody from the international office. Maybe the student is having problems finding a place to stay. Maybe the dorms weren't all, they're already booked. So the student doesn't know where to stay. So they'll go and talk to the accommodation officer about it. Maybe the student has some serious problem about, I don't know, like a certain class or a certain professor. So they'll go and talk to the dean about it. So what the common thing there is that the student has a problem and the person who works in the university worker, is supposed to help the student by giving them advice or suggestions. Suggestions on how to solve this problem. So they will basically give the student some options, okay, and what to do. They are supposed to be helpful, they are supposed to be nice, and they're supposed to guide the student while solving this problem. Now, it isn't always going to be a problem. Sometimes the student only wants information. So in that case, it's like an interview. So maybe imagine a freshman student, a student that has skipped orientation week. So this student is lost. They don't know anything about, like, maybe they don't know anything about, like, the rules for the library. So they will go and talk to the librarian to see if maybe they can give them information about the rules for the library. So the librarian is going to tell them everything that they want to know, right? And the student will be asking their questions. So what time does the library open? And the librarian will answer, right? What do I need to do in order to loan a book? So requirements. I don't know, like, what do I need to do if I want to go and use the search engines? So again, requirements, right? So maybe that could be another thing. It's always going to be something like that, either a problem and some suggestions, or just information that the student wants to know. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions about that?
No.
Okay. All right. What else? So In the reading section, we took a look at the types of questions and we went one by one, seeing the strategies and doing examples and everything. We won't do the same here because I don't think it's necessary. I will show you with an example, okay? We'll be looking at what type of question each one is. But what I want you to keep in mind, and I think this is one good tip I can give you. If I'm honest with you guys, I think that you can answer the conversations without even taking notes, okay? I'm not telling you not to take notes, but what I want to get is that notes are not as important here in the conversations, at least not as they will be in the lectures. So I don't want you guys focusing too much on taking notes or making a transcript of the entire conversation, that you forget being present and getting the main ideas. Because I would say that's the main thing when dealing with the conversations, looking at the bigger ideas, okay? So if we take a look at the types of questions, usually the first one that you have is called the main idea question, because it asks you about the main idea of the conversation. So they can ask you maybe about the problem that the student was having, or maybe they can ask you for a summary of the conversation. So obviously for that one, you don't need your notes, right? The main idea of the conversation is something that you will remember if you were paying attention. Then you have function and purpose, which is one where you have to like analyze what somebody meant when saying something. So it goes something like, what does the professor mean when he says this? And then you can listen again. Or why does the professor say this? And then you listen again. So when you have to listen again to a part of the conversation, then you know that it's a function and purpose question. And again, you don't need your notes for this one. So it's all about being reasonable enough to know what is behind what they are saying. So it's more about the meaning behind the words, you know. So again, you don't need your notes for that one. Then you have attitude questions. This is only for lectures, so we won't see it. But then you have attitude questions that ask you about like the attitude of somebody. So what was the professor's attitude towards this? What was the student's attitude? How was the student feeling about this? How does the student feel about this other thing? So this is a lot about logic again. So it's related to understanding the emotions and the feelings behind the conversation. So, which is why it's important to pay attention, right? Because if you're just taking notes, you won't really be listening to what they mean. You will just be listening to what they say, right? But it's more important to know what they mean rather than what they say. So again, you need to be really attentive for this. Finally, you have detailed questions, which are obviously the ones that do require your notes. So in the detailed questions, they'll ask you about specific details, right? Like, what was the name of this person? What time should the student be back? I don't know. How many students were in this class? So they ask you about specific details. This is the only question that is going to require from you to take notes, which means that you should only be taking notes when you hear details. So when you hear any number, any date, any name, or any list, that's where you should be taking notes. But that's the only place where you actually are supposed to take notes, okay? Everything else you can answer without taking notes. And even the detailed questions, you know, I wouldn't say they are too difficult to remember. It's not like you have tons of dates and numbers to remember, right? They are usually details that are not that hard to remember. So is this okay? All clear? So in summary, I guess we could say, be present when listening to the conversations, try to understand the meaning of what they're saying, try to put yourself in the students and the professor's shoes, maybe. So try to like be there in the conversation, like you were part of it, because that's important here. Most of the questions are about things like that. Okay, you will see when you practice using, especially if you use like official material, You will notice that. Because when you use other types of websites, then it's not as close, it's not as similar as the real test. So you have a lot of detailed questions and the bigger ideas are kind of not that important. But if you practice using official material, you'll notice that most of the questions surround the meaning of or what the speakers mean, right? So, and before we start looking at an example, because I know that I've been speaking for a while now, before we start looking at an example, I wanted to tell you this is how you should be taking notes. So let's say this is your paper. First thing, don't use up an entire page for one conversation. Okay, manage your space accordingly. Remember that you will have 2 or 3 conversations in the entire listening. So my suggestion is use only one piece of paper for all of the conversations. Okay, so one piece of paper for all of the conversations. Don't create a mess. For the lectures, it's going to be different. But in the conversations, one piece of paper is more than enough for the 2 or 3 conversations you may get. And in each conversation, you should be dividing your paper like this. So you divide this space into 2. On one side, you'll take your notes from the students, what the student says. And on the other, you'll write down whatever you hear from the university worker, right? Whoever this is. So you should be playing back and forth between the student and the university worker. So for example, the student says, hey, I have a problem. I don't know what to do. I have no place to stay. You write down, no place to stay, maybe a sad face. The student feels sad about that. And then you write down what the university worker thinks or says about that, right? So the university worker is like, oh, well, what happened? I don't know, it's too late in the semester to book for anything. So you write that down. And then, I don't know, you continue with whatever the student says. So the student says, yes, right now I'm living at my parents' house, but I don't know, it's too expensive. So you start writing it down. And then the university worker will give some suggestions, right? So suggestion number 1, maybe you can, I don't know, maybe you can rent an apartment outside the university. You write it down, and then how the student feels about that. So maybe the student isn't that happy about it. Maybe because too expensive again, right? And then second suggestion. So you have to play like that, back and forth between the student and the university work. Right? Is that okay? You guys have any questions? Another final tip, practice realistically, please. I've had many students practicing the listening section or like the whole test, taking notes on an iPad, on cell phones, computers. Remember that in the real test, if you guys will take it in a test center, then you will have to take notes on actual paper, right? So you should be practicing like that. Practice using actual paper. Like when I took the test, they gave me like maybe 3 or 4 pieces of paper, but you can ask for more, okay? And if you're taking the test at home, then you have to use a whiteboard with a water marker, or you can use a piece of paper inside a transparent sheet. Okay, this is really important because if you practice on paper, but you're taking the home edition, the day of your test, it's gonna be uncomfortable for you to write down on a transparent sheet or on a whiteboard. It's gonna feel like it's something new for you, and you're gonna be struggling when taking notes. So you have to practice realistically. Practice the way that you're gonna take notes on your test day. Okay, that's important. Don't use anything that you won't be able to use the day of your test. Okay? Any questions about that? Nope, everything's clear. Okay, guys, then let's take a look at an example. See. Remember, get a piece of paper and a pen. I'm gonna play the conversation. The instructions here are clear. It says, listen to the conversation and answer the questions. And you have this picture that probably tells you it's between a student and a professor, right? Because they're in the classroom. So let's see. I'm gonna play the conversation.
Everything all right, Carla?
Yes, I just wanted to talk to you about the assignment that's due on Monday.
I can't give you an extension if that's what you want.
No, it's not that. I wanted to ask you about the word limit. At the moment, I'm way over it, but I found so many useful sources that I don't really want to cut anything out.
Well, it's meant as a guide rather than a hard and fast rule. It's not as if I'll stop marking as soon as I reach the word limit, but I don't really want you to go way over it either. 2,800 is the absolute maximum, I'd say.
Wow, that's still going to be hard.
Well, you can use this opportunity to try to make your writing more succinct. It's good exercise in writing technique. Think about which of the writer's points you really want to draw attention to and discard any information that isn't really relevant to your premise.
Okay, I'll try that.
Remember, you can always refer to 2 or more sources in the same paragraph, in the same sentence even.
What do you mean?
If one of your citations seems to complement what the other says, you can refer to them at the same time. You can do that when they contradict each other, too. It's a perfectly acceptable way of constructing a paragraph.
I get you. Well, I'd better go. I've got a lot to do before Monday.
Hang on, Carla. While you're here, I wanted to mention something to you.
What's that?
Have you heard about the Harvey Graduate Business Program?
No?
It's a special scheme funded by the Harvey Group, the financial place in town.
Yeah, I know it.
Well, they have a special program that they run especially for graduates. It's very exclusive. They only take on 3 people a year. Each of the major colleges in the state is invited to put forward a maximum of 5 students a year for consideration. And we only pick out the very best students, the ones with really high grades. I wondered if you'd be interested in trying out for it. After all, you've been doing well in all your modules.
Wow, it sounds like an honor to be considered. I guess all those late nights working on assignments were worth it. What does the program give you?
Well, you get work and training at the Harvard Group for a year, and then they will fund your master's course a year down the line. I'm right that you're interested in doing a master's course, aren't I?
Yes, I was considering doing something management-based.
Well, I think they discussed with you what master's course would be best for you and them, depending on the department you're working on. So you may be obliged to do the course they want you to do, but it's bound to be useful. Then they employ you for another year. And after that, you can choose to stay with the company or move on somewhere else.
Harvey's a prestigious company. I couldn't see myself moving on fast if I managed to get my foot in the door.
Indeed. Well, is it something that might appeal to you?
Maybe. I was hoping to go abroad for a while, though. What do I have to do to apply? Do I need a resume? I was working on mine just the other night.
Well, there's a rather lengthy application form to fill out, so I don't think a resume is needed. Then, if you get through the first stage, you'll have to do a presentation. If they like you, they'll invite you back for an interview. It's pretty tough, as you can imagine, but I wouldn't suggest it to you if I didn't think you could do it. I mean, you've done some great presentations in class, and you've had the experience of setting up your own business, too.
No. I haven't done that.
Haven't you? I thought you did something selling perfumes.
That's Miranda.
Oh, is it? Well, sorry about that. My mistake. But you still had experience working in a business, haven't you?
Yeah, I've worked in my dad's office in the vacations.
Well, that's very valuable, and I'm sure you learned a lot from that. Well, if you're interested in the program, come to my office later on. and I'll give you the details. After 4 is best for me.
Thanks.
Everything all right, Carla?
Yes,
Okay, guys. So then that was the conversation. It was, I would say, somehow long, right? Because it's usually 3 minutes we said in average, but it was a little bit more than that, 4 minutes. So can we summarize it? What was it about? What were they talking about in this conversation?
About an assignment for Monday.
Exactly. They were talking about this. And then they switched the topic, right? They started talking about something else. What was it?
The business graduate program.
Exactly. The professor tells her about this business graduate program and explains the whole thing. Good. Now let's take a look at the questions, starting by the first. It says, Carla wants to talk to the professor because, so let's say these are options A, B, C, D, or first, second, third, and fourth. What do you guys think?
Fourth.
Fourth? Are you sure, everyone?
3.
3, okay.
Three. Could be 3.
3. So yes, I think it's gotta be 3. Now, this is the main idea type of question, right? I don't know if you guys remember. It's the first one you get, and there are 2 types of this main idea type of question. I want to start there. The first one is when they ask about the initial problem, right? That is this case. They are asking about the reason why she initially went to see the professor, because she was the one that went to see the professor, right? Because in order to discuss her initial problem, which was she couldn't meet the word limit, right? So she was worried that her assignment was too long. But there's another type of question too that asks you to summarize the entire conversation. That is a different story, right? Because in that case, you don't only have to mention the initial problem, but you have to consider everything that was said and come up with a summary. So in that case, that wouldn't be correct, right? Because we will have to also mention the Harvard Graduate Business Program. So careful there. You know, sometimes you are so used to having the main idea asking for one thing that you don't even read the first question and you go directly to the answer. Make sure that you pay attention to the question. Is it asking for the initial problem or is it asking about the entire conversation? Right? Because those are 2 different things. And also consider the professor or the university worker's role, right? So like if the question is, Carla wants to talk to the librarian because, you know, the options are that say something related to maybe an assignment are probably not going to be true, right? Because that isn't related to the librarian's role. So make sure that you're logical when answering the question and you are careful enough to read the question. Okay? Now, next question says, read the 6 sentences below. Which 2 does the professor advise Carla to do? So this is about the suggestions. This is about the advice. What are the 2 things or the 2 suggestions that are made by the professor? What do you think?
One and 3.
Yes, does everyone agree? 1 and 3?
1 and 6.
1 and 6, okay. Anyone else?
1 and 4.
But we don't have that option, right? So it's either 1 and 3 or 1 and 6.
1 and 4.
But we don't have that option. These are the options: 1 and 3, 2 and 4, 5 and 6, 3 and 4, or 1 and 6.
2 and 4, teacher.
2 and 4, okay. I think I'm gonna have to go with Alejandro on this one, 1 and 3. Remember in the beginning, he says, well, this might be a good opportunity for you to make your writing more succinct. That is a synonym of the word concise. And also they talk a lot about if I think that if two citations contradict or complement each other, they can use them in the same paragraph, right? So you can use just one of them. So comparing and contrasting information in one paragraph. That's how it's gonna be shorter, because that's what we want, right? Or that's what she wanted, to make her essay or her paper shorter than it was. Now, if, for example, if we say, ensure that there's a reference to a source in every sentence, imagine, I think that make her writing even longer than what it is, right? Including a reference to a source in every sentence, that'd be like making her writing even longer than it already is. And then discarding information or using just one piece of information, I would say they look too extreme to me, right? At least the second one. So 1 and 3 is what the professor mentioned. Okay, it's about remembering those details. Maybe if we see the transcript, it says, well, you can use this opportunity to try to make your writing more succinct. So that is basically concise. And then they do say discard any information that isn't relevant, right? They don't say discard information from less reliable sources. They don't talk about the sources. And then they talk about if two citations complement or contradict each other, they can use it in the same paragraph, right? So that was 1 and 3. Now this is question 3. It says, the Harvard Graduate Business Program provides young people with. Let's think about this question and give me a minute. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. So then what is it? What does the Harvard Graduate Business Program provide young people with? Have you thought about it?
The first one?
First one.
Yes. Does everyone agree? Fund the master's course?
First
Is it a
one.
consensus? Okay. I do agree that they provide young people with a funded master's course, but is it really of their choice? Like, do the students get to choose what program? I don't think so, right? Because I think that the Harvard program chooses for the students what course they're gonna do. Do you remember that part?
Work. When
Right?
work in the company.
Work in various departments
No, I don't know.
4.
for a total of 2 years. Yes, I think even though honestly, like 4 is incomplete because we are missing the master's course because it is a total of 2 years and a master's course, right? But I think that would be the closest one because all of the other ones have incorrect information. Like the first one that says of their choice. So students don't get to choose the course they're gonna do. The second one says overseas, which is not true, right? Because it's not overseas. The Harvard Graduate Business Program is in town. So that's why she says, well, I wanted to go abroad, right? Because this is not abroad. In various departments is not true, right? They only get to work in one department. I don't think they mention anything about various departments. Do they say anything? So depending on the department you're working on, right? So you're just working on one department. So it's not various departments. Is that okay? Right. Now, next question says, listen to Carla. Now, this time I'm going to be Carla. So, Harvey is a prestigious company. I couldn't see myself moving on fast if I managed to get my foot in the door. What does Carla mean by this? I couldn't see myself moving on fast if I managed to get my foot in the door. What does she mean when she says that? What do you guys think?
Option number 3.
Option 3. Okay, does everyone agree? Is it 3?
Yes, I think it's 3.
Yes.
Great, great, good job. So totally, right? We could already discard option A and D because it says if I manage to get my foot in the door. And there's a huge difference between saying if I get the job versus after I get the job or once I get the job, right? So when you say if, you're open to the possibility that it can happen and it can't, right? You don't know what's going to happen. So if I get the job, there's a chance that I get it. There's a chance that I don't. We don't know. But if you go ahead and say after I get the job or once I get it, then you're already like affirming that you're going to get the job. When you don't know, right? You don't know what's going to happen. So we can eliminate option A and D. And now if we get to analyze the first part that says, couldn't see myself moving on fast. So moving on means changing jobs, right? I couldn't see myself wanting to leave, wanting to do something different, something else. So she doesn't think that she's gonna want to leave the company, right? Also, that's why it's important to know how the students are feeling about something. She was excited, right? She's like, Harvey's a prestigious company. So this is a positive reaction that she has. So she's probably not gonna say that she wouldn't want to work there forever, right? This is a negative expression. but she's excited about it. So it has to be option C. Is that okay? Any questions so far? Here. Okay, and finally we got question 5 that says, which one of these does Carla not need to do? A, send in a resume. B, complete an application form. B, C, give a presentation, sorry. And D, attend an interview. What does Carla not need to do?
Sent in a resume.
Yes?
Yes.
A.
Second one, I think.
Second one, complete an application form. Anyone else?
Second one.
The second one too, okay.
Not need to do. El tipo le dice send resume.
So, what doesn't she need to do, right?
Option
Not
one.
need to do. Option 1.
Option 1. Okay, yes, she doesn't need to send in a resume. Great. So if we take a look at the transcript, she asks, right? What do I have to do to apply? Do I need a resume? I was working on mine just the other day. And he says, well, there's a rather lengthy application form to fill out, so I don't think a resume is needed. So you'll have to do a presentation, and she has to fill out an application form. And then they'll invite him back for an interview. So she has to do the interview, she has to complete the application form, and she has to do a presentation, but the resume is not part of it. Right? So we got 4 out of 5. We were just missing the detailed question, right? The one about what the program offers. But honestly, I think it was good. What do you guys think? How do you find this conversation so far?
Exist some conversations easier than others.
Yeah, there are some ones. I mean, there are some conversations easier than others, but usually they try to make it balanced. So you will see that in your test, you find one that is easier, the other, and maybe the other one is a little bit harder. But I'd say that if you were able to answer that one, it won't get harder than that. So it's usually that. Why do you think that it was hard? Or please? You guys find it easy, intermediate, or difficult? Okay. But to be honest with you,
Intermediate.
right? You know, if I'm honest, I think most students do well in the conversations, and I think that all of you guys can do it. You know, the conversations is one of the easiest parts because everything you need really is like some vocabulary. Of course, you need to practice, you know, as everything, it requires practice and it requires active practice. So you need to analyze what you're doing wrong. If you're making mistakes, you need to see why. So like, for example, right now, most of the mistakes you were making were in the detailed questions. I noticed that. Like you were doubting question 5, which is a detailed question. You got question 3 wrong, and you were also doubting question 2 a lot, right? We had differing opinions there. But everyone was sure that the first one was the third. Everyone was sure, I think, about the fourth one. So what I've seen is that you're struggling with detailed questions, right? Obviously, I'm speaking in general terms. I don't know like how each one of you is doing. But if that is like, let's say that that is the problem, that you're making mistakes in detailed questions. First thing is that you identify that. And second thing, that you work on it. So if you're making mistakes in detailed questions, it's mainly because of the way that you're taking notes. Because remember, we said your notes should be for the details. So what you need to do is practice note taking. So for example, I would try to see any or listen to any lectures or watch any videos about history, for example, that contain a lot of details, like dates, names, and biographies. So you could try practicing with that type of material and taking notes, right? That's how you're gonna get better at taking notes in the details, because you will have so many details to take notes on, and with practice you'll get better. So if you're struggling with those details, then it's probably your note taking. Maybe if you're struggling with the comprehension, then you have to take less notes and pay more attention. If you think that they are speaking too fast, then you need to practice at different speeds, right? So start practicing listening to, I don't know, to a speed of 0.5. So have the speed of what it should be. The good thing is that right now you have many tools available, right? So in YouTube, you can change the speeds according to how you feel. So you can play it like in 0.5, then 0.75, and then in normal speed, right? You can practice use at different speeds. If you're struggling with vocabulary, then you need to review vocabulary. But I think all of you guys can do it, especially in the conversations. You can all get all of the answers correctly. So see what you're struggling on. Tomorrow we'll be practicing, so we'll see what mistakes we're making, and we'll try to focus on them. But everything is just practice, I'd say, for the conversation. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions?
No.
All right, then I sent you the link for the presentation. And please, before you go, don't forget to complete today's survey. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll be practicing the conversation.
Teacher,
Yes?
the recording of this class will be on the same YouTube channel?
Yeah, it'll be there.
Okay.
And by the way, if you ever like don't find a class, you can let me know, or you can also talk to Caroline, the coordinator of the program, because I usually share every class in a YouTube channel, but I can only share one. So she's the one in charge of uploading or downloading the videos and uploading them in all of the channels, so that every video is there. So if you don't find one, you can always talk to her or talk to me, and I'll let her know.
Sorry, what is the channel?
It should be on the description of your WhatsApp group.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes, it should be there. Nice.
Thank you, teacher.
Bye-bye.
Bye, teacher.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, teacher.
Bye-bye.